Hello, 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 and welcome to the Stride Report podcast. I am Ben Weisel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zalin. How's it going, man?
Ben, I just started cranking down a list of the top 50
Oh,
individual cross
wow.
country runners, and I gotta be honest. I got to a certain section, I was like, nope, don't like any of this. Like, I started placing guys in a certain portion of the rankings, and me being like, nope, I don't agree with this at all. You don't realize how many seniors were part of last year's group.
Mm.
It is crazy the kind of certain names that I'm finding myself listing in like the top 30, top 20, and we're
Oh,
still
man.
working on eligibility. But like I'm eventually going to send you this probably at the end of the week, and you're going to look at this and be like, I'm sorry, what? So yeah, it's a some of this is a hard one to stomach.
We need some international names coming across to bump some of these guys down with some much better PRs because, and that's the hard part about doing our rankings nowadays. We'll get into maybe cross country later in this episode, but someone could just pull a Pamela Cos guy out of their hat in August, and then all of a sudden, all of their ranking is completely changed, and
Yep.
it makes all of this much more difficult to prognosticate.
Yeah, and it's already tricky. It's already
Yep.
tricky. So this is going to be an interesting one. But we did get +2 on Spotify in terms of ratings and reviews. Thank you to everyone who did that. There
Mhm.
nothing on Apple, but we'll take +2 on Spotify. So ratings and reviews 5 stars. Please do that. Spotify, Apple, go subscribe on YouTube as well. Ben, you were not here last week. Selfish of you. We're going to do a little bit of everything today. We're going to talk pro. We're going to talk Bowerman. We're going to talk transfers. We're going to talk settlement. We're going to talk just way too early cross country thoughts. And we'll just sprinkle in just a collective episode of a bunch of little small things. So I will leave it to you. Where do you want to start today?
Let's start with the pro news, and in particular, one bit of pro news that I think came as at least a pretty big surprise to me. I won't speak for you, but Ishmael Kipkurui formerly of New Mexico, now turns pro with Nike. Runs at the Prefontaine Classic. I think finished fifth or something in the 10K. Ran very well there. This really came out of left field for me. Obviously, coming off of an NCAA title, stock is high. He runs NCAA record in the 10K. Again, stock like it makes sense that people wanted him to turn pro and that there was probably a solid offer on the table. But you're talking about a guy who still had 3 more years of eligibility in the NCAA, and as we're talking about, an NCAA that can pay you and that you can sign NIL deals through. So this was a little bit of a curious decision for me, but at the end of the day, I think the NCAA served its purpose. It got him a solid deal, I'm sure, turning pro. I just would have loved to have been able to see him run at New Mexico for a couple more years.
Yeah, I had heard at some point that like it was a 50-50 for him to return.
Hmm.
So, and I had heard that a couple months back. So it's hard for me to be too surprised by the news and development. And also, like, this is a guy who, I think it's pretty clear. Like, you come into the NCAA specifically to get this kind of contract. And like, I'm pretty
Sure.
sure he was already signed with Nike. Is that all correct? He might have already been signed with them previously, but then Alex come out and just gets a better deal, right? I don't know if that's 100% true. I have to double check, but yeah, I get it. I think the implications now are, what does this mean for New Mexico and cross country? Because I think if you had told me like, hey, they return Ishmael Kipkurui, you could have absolutely convinced me that they would
Hmm.
be the team title favorites. You absolutely could have convinced me they'd have, without question, the best 1-2 punch in the country, a 1-2 punch that could have realistically gone 1-2 at the national championships. And they have a bunch of talented depth where like they have 4 or 5 guys where 3 of them just need to hit on the right day. And if that happened, I would have probably um, taken New Mexico as my preseason favorite.
Yeah, and that's really where this impact will be felt the most, at least immediately, is this fall. Is we're not going to see and again, maybe this opens up money for another star athlete to come through New Mexico, and we're having we're putting New Mexico right back at the top, possibly, but almost certainly they're not going to find someone who's as ready to make an impact as Kipkurui certainly was. Looking at some of these other
Real quick,
professional,
before you move
yeah, go
on,
ahead.
real quick, I'm just curious. So, even without Kip Kirui, do you believe New Mexico can win a national title?
I think so. Just and we'll get into this on the men's side. I think it's pretty wide open on the men's side. I don't see a whole lot of any team that's overwhelming me with their ability to win a national title. I think there's certainly guys who can, or teams that can, and I would put New Mexico in there. Now, are they favored? I wouldn't say that, but I do think that they just can based off of the other teams around them not being dominant.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm going. It's just like, BYU loses Klinger, they lose Creed Thompson, they lose Lucas Bonds, they lose one of the Joey Noakes, right? I think that's
Mhm.
like four their top four names for the national meet last year. Like for as good as BYU is, I'm not 100% confident that they'll be able to replicate that in 2025. And Oklahoma State, like they lose a few key names. I actually am still optimistic about Oklahoma State. I actually still think there's an avenue where maybe they're ranked number one in our rankings, maybe. And then Iowa State, like I think we forget they returned Sanel Masando, and Sanel Masando because he gets that JUCO
Yep.
waiver eligibility thing. So for me, there's like four teams, but I think New Mexico, like they have enough raw talent. The talent is there, but like the consistency delivering in the postseason, having that back end come through, that will be the challenge. But I still think that they're in the mix. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to some other pro names, we saw a couple different athletes sign professional contracts, including Ethan Strand, Claudia Kazmierska, Nathan Green, Michaela Rose, and Maggie Congdon. None of these come as big surprises. I think every one of these athletes had basically run out of eligibility at this point. And again, these were some of the best runners in the NCAA over the past year. Was there any surprises in terms of like where they landed or anything like that for you?
not particularly. I mean, Strad and Kazmierska and Congdon all signed with
Nike.
Nike.
Yeah.
The Strad and Kazmierska, they already had Nike NILs, but Congdon had a Hoka NIL,
Hmm.
which makes me wonder. I'm like, oh, so maybe it's like, and that's just another example, right? Of, you know, it's not the NIL deal that you had in college. You're able to go pro elsewhere. We saw the same thing happen with Parker Valby. It's happened one other place for someone else who I forget. So what does that mean over the long term? So just thought that was interesting. Green and Rose to Adidas, pretty straightforward. Pretty,
Yep.
I think they both had Adidas NIL deals. Strand, he's going to Flagstaff to train under Smith. Do you
Hmm.
like that?
I do actually. I think coming from Miltonberg and running a lot with Parker Wolf, I think we saw him take a big jump in fitness with when his strength improved, and we saw that with his cross country results. So I think it's a good fit from that perspective. I mean he'll have guys out there to train with. And I really think that him being pushed by like the Nico Youngs of the world, I think kind of simulates what he was doing at North Carolina where he has great success. So I thought it was a strong move. Again, there's risk with changing coach, changing scenery, all those kind of things, going to altitude, training there full time. But if any you trust any coach to handle that, Mike Smith, and you would also it also lines up with the trajectory of Strand's training so far.
Two notes. One, I think I would have actually liked to see him. So he's Strand and Kazmierska are part of the Nike, swoosh track club,
Yeah.
right? That's where they're effectively. So swoosh track club is Nike's new pro training group where they're having a training base in Provo, Utah under Doji Taylor. They're having another one in Eugene, Oregon under Jerry Schumacher, Shalane Flanagan, and then they're having another one in NAU under Mike Smith. To me, I would have thought that going to the Eugene based would have made more sense for his skill set. I think if you're more like aerobically inclined, you go to, Mike Smith and Flagstaff, but to each their own. He still ran 7:30 in the 3K. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not like he's not aerobically inclined. I'm curious, how many years does it take before we see a male Nike signee join Dilgy Taylor?
Oh, that's a good question. Hmm. Because there's not anyone. I mean, maybe Corrigan if he like when he turns pro. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you.
Yeah, Corrigan. And I think Corrigan's Nike NIL. Yes.
Yeah, I can't keep track of all of these deals. It would make sense since BYU is sponsored by Nike.
Um, I'm just taking a look at this. It's so the current slash now former NIL athletes were Megan Hunter, James Corrigan, Jenna Hutchins, Ethan Strand, Parker Wolf, Claudia Kazmierska, Maddie Elmore, Elliot Cook, and Matthew Erickson. So
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. So, all right, let's move off of that. The Bowerman, the women's nominees, we're recording this Tuesday morning. The women's nominees were announced yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And the men will be announced today. We don't have the men yet. The women's finalists are Savannah Sutherland of Michigan, Doris Lemengall of Alabama, and Pamela Kosgei of New Mexico. Thoughts? Are you surprised? Who wins? So on and so forth.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you see two very much long distance focused athletes both be nominees. I think this is a year where we didn't see like an overwhelming sprinter or field event like athlete, which we normally do, right? Where they at least take up one, maybe two spots in the nominee list. But I mean, Kosgei and Lemengol are both very deserving to be on this. I think Lemengol should ultimately win this if we're looking at indoor versus and outdoor. I mean, obviously Kosgei gets the two national titles outdoor, but Lemengol beats her indoor, runs all the collegiate records. I don't think there's a world where she loses this award.
Um, I'm with you. I think that Lemengall is going to win this. Sutherland broke the City McLaughlin 400-meter hurdle record, and she won every 400-meter hurdle race that she contested this past spring. She had a great indoor track season, but she didn't win a national title. She didn't have like a definitively great, like, oh my god kind of race or
Yeah.
anything like that. She really only has the spring season to lean on, and like, hey, like a lot of that's the case for a lot of women, but um, yeah, I don't know. I thought one of the Mole sisters, the from Washington, Hannah, or I think is it Amanda? Yeah, Amanda, Hannah or Amanda Mole, would potentially get in there, based on what they've done in the pole vault. But yeah, I think it's gonna be Lemengall. I think especially after running the 8:58, like she won 3 national titles. She was largely untouchable in the longer distance events. She broke a collegiate record in the indoor 5K. She broke a collegiate record in the steeplechase, one of which was like an all-time historic other level performance, which is exactly what the Bowerman wants. She has 3 national titles. It's like if she doesn't win, I don't know what else she's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, throw out the national titles and all of that. The fact that she ran all-time top 10 performance in an event is, I think, almost the only accomplishment you need to see, right? Like no one else in the NCAA is touching that, where they're moving up the all-time leaderboard. I think that's really all you have to say with Lemon Goal. And then she has all those national titles, and then she has multiple collegiate records. I just, if she, like you said, if she doesn't win it, we're just never going to see a distance runner win it again.
Um, Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'll move off of that just because I could go on and on. Here are the men's Bowerman semifinalists. Pick your 3, and I know that people, by the time people listen to this, they'll have already figured out who is being announced as the finalist. But here are the semifinalists. It's Mikalos Alekna? Sure. California, discus. Jordan Anthony from Arkansas, sprints. James Corrigan, BYU. He's a steeplechase. Nathan Ezekiel from Baylor, sprint / hurdles. Ishmael Kipkurui from New Mexico, distance. Carly Makarau, from Kentucky, sprints. Ralford Mullings from Oklahoma, throws. Brian Masau, Oklahoma State, distance. Ethan Strain, North Carolina, distance. And Jacoby Tharp, Auburn, of hurdles. Thoughts?
Yeah, not a great list of distance nominees here. I can't pretend to know a lot of these sprints and throws guys, but yeah, I mean, I don't think any distance athlete deserves to win this. Um, who would you say is the most worthy of being like a finalist from the distance side? Because it's a tough one, right?
It is. I
They
think
all have compelling arguments.
I think Ethan Strand probably gets put in there. I think he has the shot. It's gonna be. It's because here's the problem. If you're looking at this from like a 2-season perspective,
Yeah,
right? Like then it's like if it's just like the flat out like who's been the best of the best. Ishmael Kipkurui maybe has more of an argument.
sure.
It's one of those two, but like Brian Massell also won 2 5K national titles this year. So like
Yeah.
and it's also like, okay, but then like James Corrigan, you can argue, has been the most complete
Yeah,
of those 3 guys. Now, granted, those 4 guys, I guess. Now he doesn't have the indoor track accolades, but like he
exactly.
was also, yeah, I don't know, man. It's really hard. If I had a guess, man, I just don't even want to say it. Seems stupid just trying to guess. I want to make sure I have this right. I would guess maybe like Ishmael. I think like maybe like Jordan Anthony and like Mykonos Alekena from California, who, by the way, like I think he has a chance of winning it. By the way, um, Alekna, I don't know how you're saying that name. He's thrown. He has the number 1 discus time in the country. He's thrown 75.56 meters for the collegiate record. The number 2 all time is Ralford Mullings, who's also a nominee here, who's thrown 69.31. This guy has thrown over 6 feet more than the NCAA number 2 all time. And he, by the way, he has the next, according to USTF CCCA, he has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He has the top 9 throws
Oh my gosh.
ever. And I think of those 9, looks like 6 of them came this spring. So I think I would take almost Electa to win that. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm with you. I think it'll be Kipkurui as the lone distance finalist, but man, it is real tight with him and Strand. I mean, you get they both have collegiate records. Kipkurui edged him with 2 NCAA titles, but Strand maybe was better over like better collectively between the 2 seasons. It's a tough one. I'll be very interested to see the results of the voting here. This will be one to talk about in a week or so.
By the way, I forgot. I did recognize this name. Yeah. And I know we're a distance podcast, but Alekna is actually going to Oregon as a grad transfer
Oh,
now.
geez. Okay.
Yeah. He's the world record holder, which makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's definitely going to win it. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely, no one else. Unless someone on the sprints
The
side figures
previous record
crazy.
was 74.3 that he had set, and the previous record before that had been 74.08 since 1986. Yeah, he's on win. He's going to win that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's who's finishing second at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Transfers. We got a couple transfers. I already spoke about a handful of them last week. We're trying to touch on a little bit of everything here today, but we got 2 names here. Bahiya Arfaoui, the Eastern Kentucky middle distance standout who had a breakout year on the track this past spring. She's run 2:01 flat for 800 meters and 4:05 for 1500 meters. That's NCAA number 6 or collegiate number 6 all time over 1500 meters. And she was an NCAA championship qualifier in the metric mile. She's headed to Oregon now as a standard transfer. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this makes complete sense, right? This is Oregon's MO, just collect as many of these star middle distance runners as you can. So again, makes complete sense. I'm curious to see what they can get out of her, if they can get anything out of her in the fall, because I think you're looking at a pretty interesting Oregon team if they can put all the pieces together. But again, this is made for the indoor outdoor seasons where she can be another scorer in the mile 1500 or be another piece in the DMR in what is already a very loaded middle distance unit for Oregon who did just lose Claudia Kazmierska. So excuse me, L. Why am I having a hard time with this?
Arfaoui?
El Arfaoui slots right into the Kazmierska role in a lot of ways. Obviously, without the experience and a lot of the accolades, but certainly comes in with this. I think a similar amount of talent or at least potential, which is I think very exciting if you're an Oregon Duck fan.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I agree. I think like on paper she fits in perfectly. Again, the bigger question is, of course, what can she do on the grass? And plus, like I think like it's more just like a long term like replacement for the Aiel Des for the Kazmierska.
Yeah,
I think Barnett's out of track eligibility, but coming back for cross, like they needed to essentially replenish the mile 1500-meter prowess that they're so used to and known for. Um, is she a scorer this fall?
I think at Oregon, I don't think so actually. No, no, I think they got enough. I mean, you got
Because I don't
uh
know. I don't. In theory, Ayoldis could maybe come back if she gets like a waiver somehow. And
sure,
Elmore could like again. Those women didn't compete past like mid. Like Elmore didn't compete past like mid October. So in theory, she gets a waiver if she wanted it.
yeah,
Ayoldis has only competed in 3 seasons of cross country. Now with that new like technicality being like, hey, if you competed in like the JUCO or NAIA or a
right,
different university, which I
yeah.
think Ayoldis did, does she then get another year of eligibility because now it doesn't count? I don't know, but there's a realistic world where maybe one or both of those women get an extra season of eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like if either of them do, then I would be very surprised if LR Fui is a scorer for Oregon this fall.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but we've been wrong before. We've been wrong
Hey,
before.
again, this is the exact type of transfer that can have some like you can see big improvements out of, right? Especially when you're talking about more of a middle distance athlete going to a place where she can maybe improve her aerobic fitness, right? Where she's going to be training alongside better athletes, an Oregon coaching staff that's done this before, turned middle distance runners into very all Americans on the grass. So wouldn't it be stunning to see her take a nice leap forward? But let's move on to another transfer that we just saw this break this morning, I think, and that is Reese Sharman-Newell headed to Texas A&M. The middle distance star has PRs, I believe, of 145 and 339 in the 800 and the 1500, respectively. Uh, Coming from D2 Colorado State Pueblo, just won NCAA title in the 1500 meter this past spring. I think this makes all the sense in the world for both sides, right? I think Texas A&M, they get another star middle distance guy, and Sharman-Newell, he gets to come into a program that has produced multiple NCAA champions, most recently Sam Whitmarsh in the 800. I think this is a perfect fit between school and athlete.
Perfect fit. I agree. Aggressive front runner, just natural raw talent. I think he's become a bit more refined. I think there's still aspects of his racing that need to get a little bit better, but has run 145, right? Like he's run 145 overseas. I don't know if he's replicated that at the NCAA level, but he won his heat at the Brian Clay Invite. I want to, or did he win his heat? No, he did not. But he came,
He finished third,
third in
146.
that. Yeah, that was against Kyle Reinheimer, I believe, where he got third in that heat at
Mhm,
Brian Clay. But dude is incredibly talented. I think he just needs to be able to find consistency at the very, very peak of his fitness. And if he runs 145, he'll be an All American. If he's able to run 145 consistently, he'll be an All American next spring. I believe that in terms of natural talent, he's one of the top 8 guys in the NCAA for the half 800 meters next year, at least next spring. Um, so yeah, I'd be curious to see how he does there. I think it's a perfect fit. I think he
mhm.
also kind of helps out with Texas A&M, that mile 1500-meter range that they've been very lightly dipping into.
Yep.
So I don't know. I really don't know actually if you could have convinced me of a better spot for him. Like I don't even know if Oregon makes as much sense as Texas A&M does. I don't.
I
I'm
think
just trying to think like where else.
Iowa State maybe would have been the only
Maybe,
other one, and
maybe.
that's the only other the school that came to mind that hey, this would have fit pretty well. But to your point, from a like tactics perspective, this is an even better fit. I think that for Texas A&M's a way better fit from Iowa State perspective in terms of hey, front runner wants to push the pace, just out fitness everyone. That's Texas A&M's MO.
Speaking of transfers, we don't have this one down on the sheet, but Kirk Dawkins from Florida
Huh?
A&M,
Yeah.
Iowa State, he's heading there next year. 146, ran a massive PR to even get into the national
Hmm.
championships. Um, is now heading to Iowa State. Thoughts? What do we? How do we feel about that move?
Yeah, I mean, good for him, and I think it's a perfect type of flyer for Iowa State to take, right? Someone who really came on strong this spring and is another candidate, kind of like El Arfaoui, who hey, you take a big leap forward, you go to a bigger program, see if you can maintain, improve your tactics, and maybe even take a little bit of a step forward in fitness as well. So yeah, I like that for both parties as well. I think obviously coming in a lot less heralded than a lot of these other names that we've talked about. So there's going to be a little bit more risk there of proving, hey, this wasn't just like a one shot wonder here. But I think if you're betting on what you saw in his last couple of few races, I think Iowa State's a great place for him to be able to get that consistency and take that next step forward to just making nationals to being someone that can be competitive in a final.
I agree. I agree. I think this is the perfect program for him. Can develop. They still need a little bit more. They needed more help beyond just the signing of Sam Austin to Iowa State. I think they're going to lose a handful of really top, strong 800-meter guys. I'm not confident that Darius Kipiego has any eligibility left. So yeah, I think it's a great signing, good signing, and I think it's a perfect fit for where Dawkins is in his development and what needs to happen in order for him to take that next step. So. Okay, cool. We finally, after 28 minutes into this podcast, get to talk about, as we've been saying, I think for like months now, the
Yeah.
NCAA settlement, which is now official. It's been cleared. A federal judge has approved it. There are most of this is still on par with what we have spoken about previously, but there are a few minor caveats. Ben, take it from here.
Yeah, so I like Gary, you said we've been teasing this for a while, being like, hey, whenever we have time, now we finally have some time to flesh this out and talk about, hey, what's going to happen and then the implications of all these things. So just to kind of lay down a couple things that are going to change with this settlement. There's not going to be any scholarship limits anymore. And I should phrase all of this. This is for the Power Four conferences or any of the conferences in the settlement and any other schools that want to opt in to this settlement, essentially that want to be able to pay their athletes, right? And this is what this is all about: the ability to pay athletes from the university rather than just from NIL money or whatever. So this is not going to necessarily be the case for all conferences, all schools in the Division One level, but at the very top level, this is going to be the case for those Power Four conferences. So no scholarship limits. You can give as much scholarship money as you want for all sports, which is really interesting. I think it's something that will probably affect other sports more than track and field, where there wasn't a whole lot of schools that were fully funded anyway. Um, But the ones that are, they can go even further. Hey, Oregon can sign as many people as or spend as much money as they want. They can't sign as many people as they want because there are now roster limits, and the roster limits I believe are set at 17 for the cross country roster and 45 for a track roster. Now, if you've never been on a track team, 45 might sound like a lot. It's not. Those spots go pretty quick. If you have a team that is competing in all the field events, sprints, distance, middle distance, those go pretty quick. And 17 for cross country is just very very low. We're talking. I mean, I was at Belmont. We had small rosters, and we were at like 13, 15 guys, right? And again, that was we had a small roster. A lot of these bigger schools, you have a lot of guys on scholarship, and then you have 10 guys that are 10 men or women who are walk-ons, right? And just
There were rosters that were
at,
52
yeah,
people big,
at least.
like
Yeah, yeah.
crazy big.
Yeah. And so this is going to change. This is going to be one of the more significant changes is the roster limits for cross country, where you just can't stack as many people as you want and hope that someone and just run them 100 miles a week and hope that they turn good, right? The days of doing that are not completely gone because there's going to be there's still going to be some schools that do that, and the schools that don't opt in can have as big of a roster size as they want. But you're going to see coaches be very targeted about the athletes that they're bringing in, even if they're not giving them any money. You're going to have to be a very very high caliber athlete to just get on teams at this point. Whereas before, hey, you were a solid recruit coming in, sure, we'll let you on the team. It's no skin off our back. We won't give you any money, and if you turn good, hey, we'll give you a scholarship at some point. For now, we're going to see a lot less of that development, at least happen at these big schools, right? And so I think the trickle down effect is you're going to see a lot more improved athletes come from lower level teams. And I think as we're seeing the fluidity with the transfer portal, I think we're just going to see a lot of schools become feeder schools to these bigger universities because again, they're going to have the developmental spots for athletes, and then once they develop, then they can make their big move and go to a bigger school and get paid that money, but or at least be given a scholarship, right? But I think this is only going to exacerbate just the amount of movement we're going to see since the introduction of the transfer portal. I think these roster limits are going to have a huge impact on, and we can't even think of all the impacts that it's going to have. But that's just one that comes to mind right away.
And that's like, I'm not even confident that there's going to be a system set up that's big enough as like a feeder school system. And like what I mean by that is like, I'm not confident how many of these teams like aren't going to opt in. You know, like I remember talking to
Yeah,
a coach at like a mid major and being like, yeah, we're opting in. And I'm like, you guys can do that? Like you have the funds to do that? You're like, no, but we're gonna figure it out, I guess. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm cool, I guess. And like that's a program where I'm just like, how are you even gonna do it? Like, so it's things of that nature where I'm like, man, if that school is opting in, that like, how many of these mid-major, mid-level schools like are going to keep doing the same thing? Like I had someone come to me and be like, hey, you know, like working on, you know, potentially grad school, thinking about it. Like, how many of these mid-major schools do you think are going to opt in? And I was like, based on my conversations, more than maybe you realize. And that's not a good thing for that person because that person's trying to transfer in, and if there's roster limits, then their pool and the scarcity goes away. The scarcity goes up. The availability of teams that they can realistically jump into goes down. Now, I think there's an important caveat that I am almost relieved to hear,
mhm,
and that is that schools are allowed to now grandfather in, and you and I both check this, identified athletes this year. What that means is that you're essentially saying, hey, there are roster limits moving forward, right? For any athlete that you sign moving forward, any athlete that you sign, transfer in, recruit, whatever it is, but any athlete that's currently on the team or that was already signed prior to the start of this settlement, which was June 30th, I believe, those athletes are grandfathered in. They technically do not apply to the count. It's only just the athletes from here on out moving forward, which is encouraging. And that's exactly what I hoped and want, and being like, why are we not at least grandfathering these athletes in? Like, you're just, I don't want to say ruining their college careers, but you are effectively just saying like, nope, are you good enough? Tough. I don't care. Get out. And I really disliked that. I was really against it. And I think that caveat has allowed me to kind of better explain why the transfer portal isn't as crazy extensive
Yeah.
as I thought it was going to be. I thought this summer I was going to be like, I'm going to be at my laptop every single day, no breaks, just talking about transfer stuff. And don't get me wrong, that's still a very prevalent thing that I do, but it's not nearly to the extent that I thought it was going to be, probably because of the grandfathering clause.
Yeah, and so we're not going to see the full effect of this year necessarily because to your point, hey, the incoming recruits, they're going to be going to the schools they would have gone to regardless of this settlement. Any transfers, any existing athletes, schools didn't have to change their philosophy this year. Really, when it comes down to roster size, right? So it's moving forward, and it'll be kind of a slow trickle down effect, I think, over the years. But make no mistake about it, it's going to be very difficult for domestic recruits to sign for these top programs at this point because you're talking about very limited amount of spots available unless you're one of the best in the high school level. You're going to struggle to find spots, I think, at a lot of these schools because again, we're seeing more and more international athletes come in because there's more money available and we're able to get higher quality of athletes into the NCAA system. We both talked about the pros and cons of that. Obviously, I think we've seen the level of competition go up in the NCAA, which has been great, and that's forced a lot of the U.S. athletes to level up as well. And we're seeing some of the best U.S. athletes ever come out of the NCAA system in the last couple of years, and I think that certainly could be a pro. But if you're coming out of high school, like for someone like me coming out of high school, I there's a lot of schools I could have run and walked onto. I think that shrinks significantly in a year or two in terms of like that kind of athlete. They're looking out and be like, there's just not many schools that are willing to give me this open roster spot because I'm not going to be able to contribute right away.
Well, and not only that, but like, you're like, oh, I could have walked onto a handful of schools. I think you could have even gotten like some partial scholarship money based on your, like, you were what, a 414 miler, 413 faster.
Yeah, 411. Yeah.
You were faster. Oh, I'm betting 411. Look at me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm being a jerk. I'm sorry. I'm,
And that wasn't
I'm,
even my best PR.
what was your best PR? Was it 800?
Oh yeah, 151. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably better. Yeah. At least back in the day. That's back in the day though. Like, I remember
Yeah.
back in the day, like, you run 151 and or 411, which is, my former teammate Ned Willig, he ran that in high school. He was like a stud. He was national caliber during one indoor track season. And but kind of like everyone kind of knew who he was. And like, those were his PRs. Like, it was 411 and 151. And like, this dude was a star. And nowadays it's like, that's cute. If you're,
Yeah.
I remember like, 855, I talked to one coach. They're like, yeah, 855 is not getting you a walk-on spot on our roster.
That's
I was like,
insane.
are
That's
you
that's
insane?
ridiculous.
Like, it's crazy. And I get it though, because there's limited spots. They have limited availability. Not only are these scholarship like roster limits, like, but like, you're not even going to always have like enough money to like fill that. Like, sometimes like you just don't have the space for it either. You don't have the money for it, whatever it may be. So yeah, I remember being like 855, like sub 9.
That's
You're
crazy.
not even getting on. I remember back in the day when we first started the Strong Report, I was like, if you have an 855 recruit, you're a top 10 recruit in the like recruiting class in the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
crazy. So man, how times have changed. We're getting old, dude. We're
Oh
getting
yeah,
wild.
yeah, yeah. I mean, every time we talk about things from our time, we date ourselves awfully quickly. But yeah,
We're not even 30. I'm 29. I'm
I know, I
29.
know. I'm 28. It's not like we're old. It's just things
Oh
move
my
quickly.
god! It just makes me feel like I'm like, man, I'm not even that old. I'm just like, back in my day,
Yeah,
here I am, like we cut back to the Ben Affleck meme, just like me smoking my
yeah.
cigarette, just oh my god, these kids. Anyways,
Yeah. So I think all this to say is we're going to see changes in the way that coaches are handling recruiting, whether it's from the high school level, transfer portal, all these things. Probably not a ton of changes this year, but we are going to see it moving forward, and it's really going to change how we see just the flow of talent in the NCAA system, and all this is under the umbrella of the ability for schools to pay athletes is not done so that they can pay runners, right? We all know this. It's done so that they can pay the athletes that drive revenue. That's football primarily and basketball secondarily. So the scary part about all of this, and some people have flagged this, and some otherwise it's been kind of left unsaid, of being like, hey, what happens when schools are spending way more money on football than they ever could before? How are they going to balance their budgets? And unfortunately, track and cross country could end up being those balanced budgeting moves. And that's kind of the scary part, is there's no more scholarship limits, but there might not have even needed to be a scholarship limit for 90% of the NCAA after these changes, where athletic departments are going to be funneling so much more money towards their revenue generating sports. So that is also the scary kind of thing looming over all of this, is what impact does this have in terms of funding for just the NCAA as a whole when it comes to these sports?
I think I don't want to say encouraging part, but I think the telling part is that you can kind of already see like which of these programs are going to be okay over the long term, like in terms of like how they're beginning to invest, right? Like you're seeing certain distance programs and middle distance programs beginning to get more aggressive or stay aggressive with their recruiting, and you're like, okay, now with all this settled, like what's coming down the pipeline, seeing them continue to maintain is encouraging because it means that they still have resources and money and scholarships able to allocate and give out. Because again, those roster limits are limits. They are not, must reach
Yeah.
quotas, right? So I think that is an encouraging part. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be programs that are cut. Um, it's going to stink. Like within the next year, you and I will be on this podcast
Mhm.
and be like, oh, the Zatland School for kids who like to read good. What is it? What is it? The Zoolander School for kids who I
Yeah.
forget. I would love to figure
Who
if I
can't read
had
good or something.
yeah, who can't read good and stuff. Yeah. Uh, they're like they've cut their they've cut their track program, and unfortunately, that's going to be the case. It's going to be the case at least within the next year or so. Although Radford brought back their men's indoor and outdoor track programs, so like,
Yeah, I think that all the signs have been actually, like you're saying, fairly promising. I'm just curious to see how sustainable that is, right?
I
Like
agree.
where it's
I agree.
like even like an SEC team, right? Or SEC school. Like let's say Auburn decides, hey, that we're gonna like jump in and get some real good athletes on the cross country side. What happens in a couple years when they're like, hey, we've been spending a lot of money on our football team. It hasn't brought in the revenue we expected. Like all of a sudden we're losing money as an athletic department. Like that's the kind of stuff that scares me a little bit, where it's like a lot of these teams are going to take huge risks for their football and basketball teams, and if they don't work out, the risk ends up falling on us, unfortunately, on the Olympic sports.
I think SECs. Yeah, I mean, and I think we're just giving examples, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's wild. It's crazy. Like this will not. I think this will only like we've kind of unearthed, we've unveiled like the craziness that can and will happen. By the way, does this mean that you get a paycheck from the NCAA?
I do. I get I think it was $70, I think it
Oh,
was.
it's better
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
$7, like we thought it was gonna be. You get $70.
Yeah, and all I had to do was be at Belmont for 6 years.
Just a pat on the back. Nice job, kid. Here's a little paycheck. Go buy yourself something nice. Like,
yeah, it's pretty funny. I'm honored to be on the list. I think is all I can say.
I'm not gonna lie, $70 is I think more than I thought that was going to be.
Yeah, I had zero expectations coming into it. I was like, honestly, as long as like they contact me, I'm gonna be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and it's like, congrats. Here's an iTunes gift card. Like, you're
Yeah,
gonna really,
yeah,
you're gonna really love this. So, well, congrats on your iTunes gift card. Essentially,
yeah. I'm a professional athlete. I was a professional athlete. I
you were a
got paid for
professional
my running
athlete.
career, right? Yeah, exactly.
I love
So
that.
yeah, it'll be fascinating to see where it goes from here. I wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about this during the summer before we go into this next academic year. Obviously, I'm sure we'll hear more and more. A lot of the opt-in decisions were due at the end of June, and so a lot of the schools have already made their decisions. I think conferences have to decide on specifics around their rules if they're going to have anything different than the NCAA as a whole. But yeah, we're gonna obviously see this evolve throughout the summer. So yeah, I think that wraps it for the house settlement stuff. Again, we'll keep track of that throughout the summer and throughout the year and see what those impacts are. But we're gonna cut the podcast here. We will have more cross country stuff to talk about. We will have more transfer. I wouldn't be surprised if we have coaching news coming out over the next week or so. So make sure you're checking back in, and we will have you covered at the Stride Report podcast. Don't forget that, like Garrett has said, this is one of our busiest and best times of the year. It's summer. We are fully locked and loaded.
We are fully locked and loaded. Also, important news that I was able to go back and find. It was the Derek Zoolander Center for kids who can't read good and who want to learn to do other stuff good too.
That acronym would be long.
The acronym would be long. Yeah. Tough day for the dyslexic crowd. But so yeah, that was the other important caveat of all of this. But Ben, that's all I've got. We have got tons of transfer news. We've got tons of just content all around. Way too early XC previews have been released. D1s have been released. We'll work on D2 and D3 and maybe NAIA as well. And then of course later this month, we're already repping it. We're already putting together some rough drafts for the top 50 cross-country individual rankings. That is looking spicy already. I've already been working on it. But in the meantime, go check out YouTube, go check out TikTok, go check out Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Go leave 5-star ratings and reviews there. And I think that is it.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.